Hello, brothers. How you doing today? Hope all is well. I know I'm early. I know. Great brethren, how you doing today? Hope your day is going well. So let's get into it. All right. So this month is a good month for so-called black men. Basically you had 45 exonerations in the month of February. So that's good. That's very good. Okay. Very good. So this is one of them. So this is from the National Registry of Exonerations. Okay. You got 3,036 exonerations since 89 and 26,700 years. And they got to increase that because they're going to have some more exonerations at the end of this month. So shouts out to them. So who knows? So that's going to bump up to at least about 3,100. Okay. That's my prediction. So, Willie Stokes, who was he? Well, October 1st, 1980, 30-year-old Leslie Campbell was fatally shot during a dice game near intersection of 30th Street and Girard in Philly, Pennsylvania. Okay, Francis Dickens was wounded. The case remained unsolved until March 29th, 1984. All right, so this is before I was even born, years, when police arrested 28-year-old Willie Stokes. Preliminary hearing, May 30th, 84. Franklin Lee testified that around Christmas, 82, he was in his basement. So, usually these cases are solved with DNA evidence, and let's see where it goes. So Stokes went to trial in Philly County Court on common pleas. Daniel McPeak testified that he was standing outside of a bar 1 block away when he heard around 6 gunshots. He said he saw a man standing in the scene of crime with a gun in his hand. McPeak said that he could not positively identify that person, but he described him as a black man. Okay, here we go. 5'7", probably had on Nikes. Back then, probably Pumas. Weighing 130 pounds, 18 and 19 years old. Gilbert testified that he arrested Stokes, who was a black man, 5 feet 7 inches tall, and 123, and was 20 years old at the time of the shooting. And was light. Daryl Hargrove testified that he participated in a dice game. And let's get all the way down to the bottom. So over the next several minutes, Lee described how he had been arrested for a rape and unrelated murder that came to falsely implicate Stokes. He said Detectives Gilbert and Lawrence Garrard began asking about Campbell's murder. When Lee said he knew nothing about it, the detectives told him another man who was facing a murder charge, Anthony Singleton, had given a statement saying that in Lee's basement, he and Stokes, Archie Scott, so basically he's probably capping. Okay. So they convicted him on first-degree murder and possession of an instrument of a crime. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Wow. That's crazy. None of it was true. So for the next 37 years, Stokes sought to overturn the conviction. He filed petitions under the Post-Convict Relief Act. He filed petitions on a federal writ of habeas corpus. He worked with a lawyer and without a lawyer. A recitation of his legal battle and procedural history takes up thousands of pages and spans decades of failure. But over those years, ever so slowly, the truth began to ooze out. On December 30th, 2021, U.S. District Judge Timothy Savage accepted the recommendation of the U.S. Magistrate Carol Sandra Moore Wells, who had presided over the evidentiary hearing in November 2021. Judge Savage vacated Stokes' conviction and ordered a new trial. After the evidentiary hearing, Lee repeated that he had been saying since Stokes' trial in 84. Stokes never admitted killing Campbell. Of course, I like to If I can, for the record, apologize to Mr. Stokes and family for the problem I caused, Lee said at the hearing. After Lee testified, Judge Wells asked Stokes would he like to respond. Stokes' lawyer, Michael Diamondstein, who had fought for Stokes for years, advised Stokes not to speak. Of course, Judge Wells declared, let the record reflect, he's crying. I'm going to take his tears to indicate he's accepting the apology. The evidence showed that 9 days after Stokes was convicted, Lee was prosecuted for perjury based on an affidavit sworn out of D. Donato. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Correct me if I'm wrong. Prosecutor Robert Morano, that Lee was charged with perjury and was not itself particularly notable, except Lee was not accused of lying under oath for his recantation at Stokes' trial. Instead, Lee was charged with falsely testifying at Stokes' preliminary hearing when Lee said that Stokes admitted killing Campbell. Judge Wells concluded that District Attorney's Office had failed to disclose the prosecution of Lee to Stokes in violation of Stokes' constitutional right. District Attorney Larry Krasner declared Mr. Stokes' ordeal over nearly 4 decades of killing relief petition after relief petition only to be rejected on procedural basis and without all evidence. The Constitution says that he was owed by the Commonwealth, underscores the urgency of the criminal legal system seeking justice over finality. Some lawyers, especially prosecutors, just want to get their numbers. Just saying. Judge Wells further finds that there was reasonable probability that Stokes would have been acquitted without Lee's testimony, and the trial verdict is therefore unreliable. On January 4th, 2022, Stokes was released from prison. On January 27, 2022, at the request of the District Attorney's Federal Habeas Unit, the charges were dismissed. The same day, Stokes filed a lawsuit against Dio Donato and co-prosecutor Robert Morano, as well as the state's Detective Garrard and Gilbert, both of whom were deceased. The failure to disclose the prosecution of Lee was perhaps the most egregious and prosecutorial misconduct, if not most salacious. Over the years, Lee has come forward to admit that detectives arranged for him to have sex with his girlfriend and with sex workers, as well as have access to drugs. In August 2021, Philadelphia Inquirer newspaper exposed how Gerard and Gilbert took jailhouse informants into police administration's building in 8th and Race Street. The building, known as the Roadhouse, became notorious as a location where prisoners who gave statements implicating others in murders and other crimes were allowed to have sex and take drugs in interrogation rooms. Wow. Okay, the article Sex for Lies details numerous instances of practices, including Lee's admission that he had sex with his girlfriend, So, Stokes was the oldest of nearly 24 homicide convictions that had unraveled in the few years since Krasner was elected district attorney in 2017. By the time of the release, the case was testament to procedure and other difficulties that wrongfully convicted defendants face. Okay. So, Gary Hart, who Singleton and Lee initially said was in the basement when Stokes admitted shooting Campbell, testified that he was not in the basement at all, of course. Darrell Hargrove, who changed his testimony, that he and Stokes, he saw Sosa with a gun from 10 minutes after the shooting. Of course, he recanted this testimony. At the time of release, Stokes had spent 37 years and 4 months and 15 days in custody since the date of the conviction, the longest of any exonerated defendant in Pennsylvania history. Wow. So, brothers, I'm not trying to tell you what you should do, but every year I donate a little bit of my coin, to make sure that situations like this can actually have some money behind it so you can get brothers out. Okay. And if you can, donate your time. Doesn't take much. You don't have the coin, donate your time. Use your expertise. Surely you can read. Surely you can read legal briefs. There's different books that you can actually pick up, and you can learn how to read briefs how to actually write briefs, and how to actually give your time so that you can help situations like this not occur. Now, what I suggest is that they need to actually start, like I said, licensing, just like a lawyer. You get your bar, you take the bar, and you have to actually pass it, and you get licensed. You have to do a certain amount of hours, per week in some states. Okay. You got to have a license to practice medicine. You have to have a license to operate heavy machinery. You should have a license to be a police. And when incidents like this occur, and even with the prosecutors, when they do things like this, they need to lose their license and their ability to practice. And reciprocity should actually be paid out, not just from the court, but from the people who actually falsely sentence these people. But I digress. Moving on to the next thing. So how's the time coming? So this is something that's interesting, and this is Campylobacter. So you said, what is Campylobacter? Well, it's a superbug. Infected chicken is being sold all over the US. All right. So a certain amount of bacteria is allowed under USDA rules. Okay. But US companies routinely exceed that. They don't have to recall their products. So Joanne Canada Alvarez found her 9-year-old son splayed out on his bedroom floor, unable to move and foaming at the mouth. What was wrong with him? The day before, he had been playing golf with his family. That means he's in the upper class. Now he's completely paralyzed by the sudden onset of a rare autoimmune disease that doctors link to Campylobacter, a bacteria mainly found in poultry products. It's kind of similar to Salmonella, but not quite. Her name is Canada Alvarez. That's an interesting name. And her husband did not know what to do with their son, whether he would survive. He was on a ventilator at the hospital, unable to even speak. His mother could see how scared he was. I could tell in his eyes, she said. Nearly 4 years after feeling sick, Javen still struggles to control his hands and right foot as a result of the lasting nerve damage. So Campylobacter is the biggest cause for foodborne illness, just ahead of Salmonella. Now, we told you with Salmonella, a lot of the Aboriginal or indigenous were actually killed through that. Okay. Food poisoning was a major killer of the indigenous people or persons. Some of their food was intentionally contaminated. And you also have other diseases that were brought over, but that was a main killer due to Europeans coming over not actually having proper corrals. So they would just let their animals run all around the house instead of putting them in pens. And they incubated and brought different diseases over with those awful ship voyages. So, but it is what it is. Both are potentially fatal. Yet between 2015 and 2020, U.S. companies sold tens of thousands of meat products contaminated with Campylobacter and Salmonella, according to government sampling records obtained by the Bureau of Investigation Journalism. More than half of these were contaminated with antibiotic-resistant strains, a rapidly escalating issue that can be exacerbated by poor hygiene conditions. Yes. So when you think about this, bros, your grocers often put water in your food, your meat specifically, to increase the weight. It's a simple trick that is done at grocery stores, right? So when you go and you buy your steak, your chicken, your things of that nature, they'll add water and dye to actually change the color so it can make it look fresher. It's simple tricks that they do. Okay, the poultry companies supply major grocery stores and fast food chains. Tyson has supplied McDonald's. Purdue has sold to Whole Foods. I go there. And both have supplied Walmart. Although USDA deems a certain level of Salmonella and Campylobacter within poultry acceptable, 12 U.S. poultry companies, including poultry giants Purdue, Pilgrim, Pride, Tyson, Foster Farms, Koch Foods, have exceeded USDA standards. Good to know. When the government began reporting contamination rates in individual plants, according to the department's records, USDA still runs tests for Campylobacter in processing plants. Batches of poultry products with contamination rates above the limits, they don't have to be recalled, although plants that reportedly exceed the thresholds can be temporarily shut down. Separate government records have shown that between January 2015 and August 2019, the same 12 major U.S. poultry companies broke food safety rules. At least they must have paid those senators and House reps and those different boards that meet in D.C. really good money to let that go through. On average, more than 80 times a day. Poultry plant workers also claim that sometimes they've been asked to process rotten smelling meats, have witnessed chickens tossed in grinders with dead insects, and found government safety inspectors. And you also have a lot of feeds, a lot of hormones, and a lot of unsavory conditions in which these chickens are actually being held. Shouts out to Super Bowl champ, Von Miller. He actually raises his own chickens. He actually studied that in college. So he studied the mating and the actual production and the farming techniques of chickens. And he actually has a really good business. Check out Von Miller. He's doing big things. Since meat comes to us really dirty, we open the box. It's like, let's see what's inside. Alleged one worker at Tyson plant in Springdale, Arkansas. Well, it's in Arkansas. Crickets, cockroaches, sometimes are already froze. He claimed that when it's pointed out to supervisors, they seem to show little interest, and so insects end up being put into the grinder with the meats. And that's disgusting. So, wow. And that's a young man. The young man right there. Shouts out to him. He's 12. Campylobacter causes more than 100 deaths every year in America, as well as 1.5 million infections. It also accounts for 40% of the country's cases in... Wow. Now, I'm not even going to try to enunciate that, but you guys can. The disease that left Javen paralyzed. Yet the sale of poultry products found to be contaminated with either that or salmonella bacteria remains perfectly legal. Canada Alvarez is still shaken by her son's experience. She should be. One day, he's playing golf. The next, he's completely paralyzed. I feel for him. So the bacteria is pretty bad. Nobody knows about it. That can destroy your whole life. It's from chicken or poultry. That's why I tell people you need to be careful how you cook your food or where you eat, because you never know what's going to happen. That is true. That is true. And we, so-called Black people, have this weird thing that we always do, and that's we always wash our chicken. Always. We never just put it in an oven and put it in the grease. No. We wash it. Sometimes twice. Sometimes we wash it at night, and then we wash it again in the morning. Okay? So the levels of salmonella and Campylobacter USDA seems acceptable. Differs depending on the product. A maximum of 15.4% of chicken parts leaving the processing plant, for instance, can test positive for salmonella. That is crazy. The USDA, Food Safety and Inspection Service, FSIS, does a very poor job of regulating the contaminants, according to Zach Corrigan. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Senior staff attorney for the pressure group Food Water Watch. This comes in the way of allowing super fast line speeds, allowing the companies to largely regulate themselves on the slaughter, and they do very little to monitor the contamination. Especially concerning the increase of antibiotic-resistant strains of bacteria, the numbers of drug-resistant salmonella infections in the U.S. rose 159,000 in 2004 to 222,000 in 2016. Wow. Jeez. You're talking over 70,000 increase in 12 years. According to the CDC, Campylobacter has been more resistant. Okay. Ciprofloxacin, an antibiotic commonly used to treat it, is increasingly ineffective. The Bureau has uncovered a catalog of hygiene breaches, many of them in plants that run for a range of U.S. poultry farms linked to supply of superbug. Catalog of hygiene breaches, many of them plants run the range. So there's a lot of plants too. Large U.S. poultry farms linked to the supply of superbug-infected meat. And these conditions have a huge impact on drug-resistant bacteria. Muhammad Islam, assistant professor at Washington State University School of Global Health. Shouts out to him. In the slaughterhouse, you have a lot of poultry coming from different places. He said, you don't know which is from a good farm, which is less clean farm, which is more colonized, the drug-resistant bacteria, less colonized. So the processing, plant hygiene, and environment condition is a critical point. The rise of superbugs is having an increasing serious human consequences. In order to treat these illnesses, doctors are turning more frequently to drugs, which often have more side effects. And if these fail, there's no choice but to let the disease take its course. Wow. Wow. It's a very long article. So, okay, let's go back to the part that we left off at. If you don't think a drive could cost your kid their life, Ashley Quepo believes that an impromptu trip to Chick-fil-A in April 2020 likely resulted in her son fighting for his life. After a long morning of homeschooling in their hometown in Brooksville, Florida, the family headed to a drive-thru as a treat. 8-year-old Chance ordered his favorite chicken nuggets, but within hours, he fell seriously ill. And usually Chick-fil-A actually does really good jobs at preparing their food. And they're very, very good when it comes to the greeting services and customer service. I will give them A1, but this was just one of those days. When he was hospitalized with salmonella, tests showed the infection was resistant to all antibiotics. So some people have antibiotic. They're not supposed to take it. They actually have bad reactions. Let's see. So he could take antibiotics. Okay. You don't think that going through a drive-through and handling that brown paper bag to your kid in the back seat could cost them potentially their life, said Quepo. But that is the reality. She believes the nuggets made him sick. It was one of his last meals he ate before falling ill. Oh my gosh. That's the parent's worst nightmare. Quepo didn't report the incident to the restaurant because the family initially thought the illness was caused by a virus. Chick-fil-A declined to comment. The odds were rarely against him, Quepo remembered. He was so dehydrated, he had a fever, and he was hallucinating. His body was trying hard to fight it, and he just couldn't. His stomach and bowels stopped working, but doctors were left with no treatment options beyond inserting a tube into his vein near his heart to give him nutrition. Oh my gosh. Wow. Chance was lucky. He recovered to full health, albeit over 4 months. These days, he no longer eats nuggets and is anxious about eating meat at all. We don't eat out anymore, said his mother. We rarely eat chicken. If we do, we overcook it. Okay. Can't eat that thing. You got to cook that thing all the way through. All the way. Okay. Eating your meat rare, that's not something that so-called black people like to do. Okay. So I feel bad for her. I feel bad for her son. I'm glad he's in full health. So, the recent rise of Campylobacter and salmonella in chicken can be traced back to the birth of industrial poultry farming. Today's chicken is America's favorite meat, but before World War II, it was expensive and eaten largely by the wealthy. The average American ate no more than 10 pounds a year, about a tenth of what's consumed today. Yes. So, I ended up talking to an elder. Shouts out to them. So I went to the reservation, went over, talked to them, and they talked about how it was like living during the Depression, because they're old. And you know what they said? We didn't really eat meat like that. I said, oh, they said they ate beans and other things that they can catch. So they would catch birds, shoot them out the air. They would catch all the types of things and eat them. But they didn't really eat chicken as much and beef as much. It was really rare. They said they might eat it like once or twice a month, if that. And it was really small. Like most chicken back in the day, they actually showed pictures of the farm that they had, and the chicken was really small. It was real small. Like if you saw like what a drumstick looked like back in the day, or chicken breast, it was like way smaller than it is now. I would say about a third of what it currently is. So you didn't really get that much on it. So that's when they say getting a big piece, it wasn't much. Okay, antibiotics catalyzed the chicken boom. The drugs had transformed human healthcare after they became widely available in the 40s, but farmers soon discovered that antibiotics not only curb disease, but also stimulate growth in animals. Okay, so a lot of your fast food, and this is a little bit off subject, and if you guys want to know more about this, there's several Black geneticists, so-called Black men that are geneticists, and they'll talk about antibiotics specifically in fast food. Go check them out. And what they talk about is a lot of antibiotics in fast foods that given to your daughter. So you need to be careful about this. Actually helps. I don't know if it helps, but it actually pushes them into puberty much faster. They develop breasts much faster. They end the period much faster, etc., 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 etc. Okay, it's not that healthy, and sometimes that can also help to increase the aging process in women. Okay, when they eat a lot of fast foods, especially a lot of sugars. Sugars mess up the elasticity of their skin. Okay, so fast food, sugars, and sugars can be found in bread. What is bread? Bread breaks down into a polysaccharin. Polysaccharids break down into simple sugars. Simple sugars turn to stored fat. Stored fat and simple sugars, when sedentary, cause skin to actually become loose. Okay, so if you have a girl, your old lady, try to keep her away from all those breads and keep away from all those fast foods. Not healthy. All right, not healthy whatsoever. So let's get into it. So it wasn't long before American poultry were pumping antibiotics into animals at stages of production, be it injections given to day-old chickens or drug put in feed to fatten up their broiler birds. Antibiotics also were helped to suppress disease common in industrial farm birds that were reared in cramped and unsanitary conditions. And that happens. Certain procedures change over time, and some rules have been tightened in recent years. FDA regulations now ban the use of drugs on animals to promote growth. That's a cap. But the consequences of antibiotic overuse are still being felt today. That's truth. Some studies from Europe have shown that it can take at least 8 years for resistant strains of bacteria to decline after antibiotic use is curtailed. That's true. Bacteria evolve to develop resistance to antibiotics attacking them. That is also true. The American antibiotic-resistant superbug kills more than 35,000 people each year, and it's going to make 2.8 million people sick. Wow. 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 1.27 million people in 2019 linked to almost 5 million deaths around the world. Wow. As fears about drug resistance have mounted, U.S. poultry firms have cut their use of antibiotics. That's a cap. Yet experts say stricter measures are still required to contain drug-resistant bacteria, especially around hygiene. Animals are slaughtered amazingly fast speeds with little regard to sanitation. That's truth. As Tyson plant in Springdale deals with turning chicken meat into nuggets and burgers, boxes of chicken have sometimes arrived rotten. The plant smells like rotten animals, the worker claimed. Meat has been left stuck in machines, which are not properly washed because the company responsible for cleaning is short-staffed. These meats elsewhere laying on the floor are alleged, rather than thrown away, it's claimed that washed and added back to the processing line. Okay. Another worker for the plant claimed that he'd seen food safety inspector service officials who are in a plant guarantee hygiene standards sleeping on the job. I wonder what these people look like that are sleeping on the job. Tyson Food denies acting inappropriately. Tyson Foods has been serving American families safe nutrition. That's the company line. Let's just move past that. Our team members have a number of ways to raise concerns and fears about retaliation beyond raising concerns of supervisors, management, and human resources. Okay, we all know resources. All right. Many so-called black men have gone and applied for employment with human resources, being mostly women, especially black women, and they get turned down. So, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, so you got dirt when we open the box, flies, crickets, cockroaches. Wow, that's pretty crazy. Companies know that consumers want to not only have products that is safe for themselves, but their families. They want products that are sustainable, justly raised. Okay. Wow. So Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine carried out a study in 2011, found fecal bacteria in almost half of 120 chicken products sold by 15 supermarket chains in 10 U.S. cities. I bet those U.S. cities were not small ones. Just saying. Let's go down to the bottom, because this is campaigners and politicians have stepped up the pressure for legal reform to classify certain strains of salmonella. Okay, that's a gap. In September 2021, the Center for Science and Public Interest, CSPI, sent another petition to USDA calling for enforceable standards and target the bacteria posing the greatest risk to human health. Several big firms, including Tyson, Purdue, signed the letter. That's a company line. And here comes the company line. Koch Food, Foster Farms, Pilgrim, Pride, McDonald's, and Walmart did not respond to requests for comments. Of course they're not. Whole Food declined to comment. That's surprising, because Whole Food usually does a very good job at processing their foods, and they have a high standard. So that's what I like about them. But I haven't bought any chicken from Whole Food in a while. So all right, chickens. So in 2010, studies for Campylobacter found that poor health and welfare among chickens also impairs their ability to control infections. Stress hormones triggers rapid growth of Campylobacter bacteria, and it's enabled to move out of the gut and into the bird's muscle tissue and parts of the. So that's the part that humans eat. So there's no formal regulation for farm conditions in the U.S. Therefore, no governor or government inspection records. Wow. But whistleblowers and undercover investigations have reported that farms have often been filthy and hugely overcrowded. Okay. So. Okay. Let's move on to the next article. And this is Amazon and Project Illiad. And you say, Illiad, like the book? Yes, like the book. Okay. But what is Project Illiad? Well, when it pulls up, we'll see. So Project Illiad is Amazon's attempt to actually be sneaky. And they've been doing this since 2017 with cancellations from Amazon Prime. Okay, let's get into the article. Amazon intentionally made it harder to cancel Prime membership with project code named Illiad. Okay, now Amazon does have different deals throughout the year. Like they'll have like a deal where you can actually get 30 days of membership. That is not usually going to be under this. This is for people that are long-term Prime subscribers. Okay, so this isn't for those little 15 or 30-day offers. This is like when you just get the $1.99. No. That's not for this. The project created multiple layers of questions and new offers before customers could cancel Prime. After the program launched, cancellations dropped 14% in 2017. Okay. So Amazon intentionally drew out the process of canceling Prime membership under a project codenamed Illiad, according to internal documents obtained by Insider. The project created multiple layers of questions and new offers before Prime members could cancel their subscriptions in hopes of reducing member churn. After the project launched, the number of Prime cancellations dropped 14%. At one point, 2017, as fewer members navigated final cancellation page. The multi-step cancellation process, a version which remains active, is just one example of subtle user experience designs. In recent years, multiple complaints have been filed with the Federal Trade Commission asking for investigation into Amazon. They call it dark patterns. Throughout the process, Amazon manipulates users through wording and graphic designs, making the process needlessly difficult and frustrating to understand. The Norwegian Consumer Council said in describing its findings in January 2021, in an email to Insider, the Amazon spokesperson said that sign-up and cancellation process for Prime are simple and transparent. Yes, but the cancellation, yeah, okay. Customer transparency and trust are top priority. That's company line, What it takes to cancel Amazon Prime subscription today. While the multi-step process isn't quite as hard to complete as a 500-page ancient Greek epic poem in the project Illiad's namesake, canceling Prime subscription does take multiple clicks, decisions, and confirmations. The end membership button can be found under a manage membership tab, which then leads to a series of prompts and offers. Yeah, they'll say, are you sure you want to cancel Amazon? Check out this offer, 30 days or 15 days, your cancellation doesn't end in such and such day, take advantage of this offer. The first prompt says, don't give up on movie night, and flags to users who have many days left until the next billing cycle. The next prompt lets users know how much money they would save by switching from a monthly to an annual payment plan. Starting from February 18th, Amazon's annual Prime membership fee increases from $119 to $139. And again, The Psychology of Spending, that's a really good book, brothers. You need to go check that out. So stores will often put that 9 on the end of their numbers because it's a manipulative tactic that actually lets you think you're spending less money. And they understand how humans read. They read from right to left, unless they are actually trained to read from left to right. Okay, so when you quickly glance at numbers, this is a simple psychological thing. You'll see 139, but you don't see it as actually 140. Okay, or 119 or 999. But really, they do that as a psychological trick to get you to purchase things. Instead of just putting 10 on there, they'll put 999. Okay, it's a trick. Just like they say in Star Wars, it's a trap. And monthly fees increase from 13 to 15. And so that's another psychological thing and marketing ploy that's actually done. A lot of marketing psychology, okay? A lot of it. So the last prompt asks users to confirm the cancellation of their membership. The first 3 yellow buttons on the page offer you to pause or keep the membership or be reminded later. So you see right there? Keep my membership. Continue to cancel. Remind me later. Okay, and they'll talk about, you'll save $12.99. Okay, if you don't cancel right now, because if you do, but look, if you cancel right then, you don't have to worry about spending the rest of what you owe. So that's the rub. Further down the page, 2 final yellow buttons listed options to cancel or pause membership. Yes, they do this. Another psychological trick. Pause on March 22nd. So what happened is you pause, and then down the road, they'll kick on that other $14 or $16 or $13 or $12. You're not going to really get any savings. That's the trick. Okay, they'll add it. They'll call it an annual fee. They'll call it something else. They do this all the time. Okay? So, a little bit interesting. So they're going to keep on hitting you with all these different fees and increases. And if you do get some good things from Amazon specifically, I like that you can actually They have a very limited movie selection. If you want my honest opinion, very limited to watch. Book-wise, that's kind of what I like most about them. But other than that, Amazon, I'm not really a woman, so I'm not buying a whole bunch of clothes. But so-called black men do have a few shoes, okay? A few. Not many, a few. But, I'm not a clothes buying type of dude. I'm not about to waste my money. That it's more of a woman's thing because she shops a lot. And a lot of the women in the area, they buy a lot of stuff from Amazon. A lot of things. A lot of trinkets, clothing, heels, purses. Purses are big sellers, especially because women, they can buy purses. It doesn't matter what their height, weight, body type. They will buy some purses, well, I tell you. So this is the last article. And what is it? Well, just do it. Zara, that's a female clothing company's online. Nike and Abercrombie, Indian factory workers weren't fully paying workers. During the last 2 years, One Thou Wow clothing suppliers in Karnataka, please, if I'm not pronouncing it correctly, let me know. India alleged failed pay their workers. They owe them 60 mil in wages. U.S. brands like Walmart, Abercrombie and Fitch, and Nike sourced their clothes from Indian factories that refused to pay workers nearly 60 mil over the course of the pandemic. Labor rights watchdog says the crisis left some households unable to buy basic staples, rice, meat, vegetables, and pay off debts. In total, 1,000 clothing factories in southern Indian state Karnataka, a garment producing hub in the country, failed to give their laborers legal monthly minimum wage increase of 417.60 rupees, or about $5.60. That's it. Workers' Right Consortium, the modest pay hike, which went into effect in April 2020, would have helped approximately 400,000 workers, mostly women, cover day-to-day living costs like housing and food. Many workers had to take on debt to buy expensive smartphones their children needed to attend classes online during the lockdowns. This is wage theft we're aware of anywhere in the global industry in terms of total impact of workers. The Karnataka factories supply apparel for global brands, including European fast fashion giants like H&M and Zara, as well as all-American shops like Gap. Garment workers had originally hoped to appeal to retailers directly for help, but the efforts didn't go anywhere until they were approached by advocacy groups. These brands have been profiting from completely inhumane labor practices. In fact, many of these companies only publicly responded to crisis in the last months. Brands are basically happy to look the other way, when hundreds of thousands of workers who make their products are being denied wages for daily survival. Until brands are called out publicly to account for it, it says a lot about the thinness of the commitments they claim to have for the welfare of the workers. And this is why I'm not a big clothing person. And I advise you so-called black men to actually learn how to make your own clothes. You got style. You got swagger. Make your own stuff. You can actually go and make your own shirts. You've got printing software that you could transfer imagery on t-shirts. You have 3D printed raised letters you can use on your shirts. You also have 3D printed screen printers that are really cheap now. And you can actually screen print, load up the ink, and the coloring, things like that. And it's cheaper than ever. And you also have computers that are connected to stitching machines that can allow you, along with laser cutters, to cut and shape clothing that can fit you. And you have laser measuring systems. I've used them in the past. And you can measure your whole body. And there's different apps that you can actually use to measure yourself with your own phone. Okay. In the end, Western corporations essentially control the fate of scores of garment workers of color, predominantly women. It's what, and I'm not even going to try to butcher that name, Duda, a assistant geography professor at Ohio State University, calls the racialized nature of the power asymmetry in the garment industry. Okay. Initially, the state government had postponed the pay hike, but the Karnataka High Court determined in September 2020 suppliers had to pay the workers the proper wage according to the Workers' Rights Consortium. Okay, the largest wages theft aware anywhere in the globe industry in terms of total impact of workers. Starting in March, apparel factories in India completely locked down for a while to control the spread of, as a result, factories were forced to shut down and lay people off. Many workers around the world went hungry. Even in good economic times, fashion brands forced suppliers to keep costs low to remain competitive. Garment factories have been made to work faster for worse profit margins over the past several years, and laborers' wages sometimes end up getting cut, according to Duda, who collaborated in 2019 garment supply chain focus. In India, for example, 80% of workers said their wages couldn't cover their living expenses, according to the study. Wow. In the case of Karnataka, government laborers did try going straight to the brands about the wage theft, according to, Guha, the Worker Rights Consortium field director of South Asia. They didn't hear back. Oh, yeah. How are they going to repay these workers? Which is the question. So let's get into that. Last month, London-based group that tracks companies' human rights efforts also stated publicly 22 companies that source clothing from Karnataka. They did have wage theft. Walmart, for example, responded that it would reach out to manufacturers to reinforce expectations. Now, this issue affected, they had some Chinese plants in the day where a lot of workers weren't paid. And that's not from China. That's from these different companies. Okay. And they had to sue them. So some of the Chinese companies had to sue these major corporations in America because they owed money. Okay. Levi Strauss said it was following up with a supplier individually in the goal of getting them to make back payments as soon as possible. Nike promised it was monitoring the situation. Why is Nike always involved in these situations? Remember we talked about that videos ago? Still, advocates didn't see immediate change. Only 5 brands indicated their workers in their supply chain had started to receive some of the due wages, including Abercrombie & Fitch and Index, the owner Zara, according to Business and Human Rights Resource Center. January 19th, the American Apparel and Footwear Association also sent a letter to Clothing Manufacturers Association of India, pressuring the organization to make its members pay legal wages for workers going forward. The U.S. Associated warned brand reputation at risk, as well as sector's relation with Karnataka. Factories have only started to take serious actions in the past few weeks, though. Shanghai Exports, the state's largest suppliers with tens of thousands of workers, announced it will pay back wages as well as report rate moving forward. The statement of Vice News. Wow. Okay, these names. I'm going to try to do this one. Srinivasa Rao Venkatesh. Please, I hope I got it right. Shanghai Exports Chief Compliance Officer emphasized that the company code of conduct clearly states that all employees shall be paid wages, overtime payments, and benefits in compliance with applicable laws. Okay. The company also disagreed with claims that was not compliant for proposed minimum wage laws. Shanghai takes in, wow, these names, man. Wow. Okay. This remains that cases we navigate the challenges impacts of the pandemic. Some brands have also had better at addressing situations than others, according to Hensler, Gap, and PHV. And owner Tommy Hilfiger and Calvin Klein were persistent in recent efforts to make Shanghai pay workers back some $10 million. Okay. And I think that's because of Kanye. Easy. He actually signed on to work with Gap, and I don't think he's down with any of that. So shouts out to Kanye. making sure they actually paid those workers, because he will flip out on you if you don't do what you're supposed to do. Shouts out to Ye. Okay. So, brothers, as we always state, you want to protect yourself. All right. You don't need to go out and be a person that's quote unquote, chasing after a lot of consumer-based spending. That's not something you, so-called black men, should be doing. It's nothing wrong with enjoying what you like and enjoying what you love. I'm never going to tell somebody they shouldn't actually live their best life and enjoy what makes them happy. But this whole over-consuming, overspending on junk just to impress some female or to impress the man next to you, that's just pointless. You don't need to spend $5,000 to $2,000 on clothes per month. If you got it, you got it. But still, really? You got situations like this occurring where they're not even paying these people all the way over there, and you end up buying clothing and shirts and shoes and flexing on cats, and it only costs like a few bucks to make some of these things, and they sell you two for 100, 200. I guarantee this article will stretch out to your higher end clothing that's produced in Cambodia and Burma. This same situation is just isolated in India. The same situation is happening probably in Vietnam and Cambodia and Burma and Singapore and Philippines and China. It's happening everywhere. People are not getting paid by these big companies because they're thinking about their bottom line. They're trying to profit as much as they possibly can. They're trying to get in the red. They're trying to stay as cash flush as they can, and damn if they screw over anyone else. So, again, bros, make sure you try to reduce as much fast food consuming, specifically of unprepared foods. You don't want to get these foods that can get you sick, especially a lot of this chicken is fast food. So you want to avoid getting a lot of that crap. Now, no, you have Tyson, you have all these food companies you pick up from the stores. Make sure you check the meats. Make sure you cook it thoroughly. All right. Don't be one of these dudes or dudettes that go, I want my chicken rare. I want my steak rare. Nope. You cook that thing like it's getting hit with napalm. You make sure you cook that thing all the way through. Okay. And if you can, there's 3 things you can do. 1, butchers. All right. Don't go to the grocery stores to buy your meat. You go to a butcher. Why? Because butchers sometimes have to actually get their meats locally, and they don't have big companies that actually provide them with their meats. And you can actually see them cut and butcher and sort the different meats, and you get a better cost. This is a little trick. Oftentimes when you go to a butcher, they only specialize in meat. They're not putting water in order to increase the weight, so they can charge you more. And water can actually exponentially increase different bacterial growths. They're not putting different dyes when they wrap it into the packaging and put it out there so that it can look better, even though it's not healthy. All right. So you want to make sure you go to a butcher. They're getting this stuff fresh, or different meat districts. Chicago has a meat district. Okay. If you're in the Chicago area or greater area, you have a meat district there. You can get all the best meats there. Okay. Get it butchered directly. Take it home. That little wrapping paper they give it to you in, just take that home, put in your bag. Boom, bam, boom. All right. And for my brothers that look, I know some of you're working, you're on the road, you're trucking. I get it. You got to get some fast food. You got to get something, man. Look, carry your own food. Bring your own lunch. All right. There's ways you can heat your own food up, but make sure you bring your own thing. You know how you prepared it. Okay. It doesn't have a whole bunch of crap in it. All right. And then for the exonerations, you've got thousands of man years, 3,000, as they just said before, that just were lost. And most of them are men. A lot of them are being overturned. False rape allegations. Back in 2006, University of Michigan.edu/law actually had 320 exonerations. Now we're in the thousands. Okay, thousands. And a lot of it's being overturned through DNA. So all these allegations, all these half truths, all these different lies and complete phony baloney statements that were made to actually fuel the prison industry to help fund and grow wealth through ALEC. And what is ALEC? Well, it's a system which provides phones, which provides foods, which provides all sorts of different things within the prison systems, and they get paid. Private contractors, private businesses, they get paid very handsomely. Even the production of different clothing and products is all through ALEC. Okay, hell, you put funding for your loved ones who you know are falsely incarcerated for crimes they didn't commit. It goes through different systems which are profiting. You have different private prisons that are open. And so these judges are incentivized to give them money under the table to push these people up through the prison system. It's a bad thing. And exploitive. Very exploitive, man. So you got these people that are robbing Peter. Well, I can't say robbing Peter, robbing Jamal to pay Peter. Okay. And some of these prisons are actually publicly traded. So there's stocks for them. They're making profit. All right. The last thing you want to do is be in their system. And for the brothers that are falsely incarcerated, I'm going to do my part beyond just donating a portion of what I can. I'm going to do my part and help out. Okay. Because that man was in there for 37 years, man. 37 years. Willie Stokes. And why I had to say his name was because I don't want you brothers forgetting the names of all these people that were falsely incarcerated. And there's a list of 45 men that actually were freed last month in February. Go to the UCI, go to Exonerate, and look up the 45 men that were actually freed this month. Okay. And there's a woman. There's one. But you want to look at the men that were freed. And you want to go and look at back in 06, you had 40% were for rape and 60% were for murder. Now, you do have burglary and things of that nature that have been added now. But for the most part, the monotony of those men that are actually being released are through DNA evidence. They had very flimsy evidence to incarcerate them. Very flimsy. And as G-Dub would say, shouts out to G-Dub, you need complete reform. Not reform. He said you need a complete overhaul. He said in conversations that were had, shouts out to G-Dub, big ups to him. But at the end of the day, I don't want the names of Willie Stokes, the names of Brian Banks. I don't want their names to be forgotten. Okay? And so I've got a Brian Banks DVD. It's Blu-ray. Okay? Bought it, never used it, never watched it. Brand spanking new. Okay? So if you guys want that, I'm going to actually mail that out to one of you. All you have to do is email. Okay? And I'll be leaving my email in the comment section. So if you watch this video, I'll be leaving my email in the comment section. You email me privately. All right? If you have a P.O. box or whatever, I don't care. I'll send it. My dime, I never use it. I don't have a Blu-ray player. I bought it. It was the only one on the shelf. They didn't have many of them. And I want you to actually have it. Okay. It's a sad story. He lost basically his career. He was all-American athlete. So, you know, I feel very sad that he had to actually go through that. Respect to Brian Banks. Respect to all the so-called black men that are falsely incarcerated for crimes they did not commit. And the loss is great for these flimsy statements these women are making for rape, and these corrupt politicians and corrupt police and corrupt prosecutors and lawyers. And some are just incompetent, some of these lawyers. But at the end of the day, as we discussed earlier, licensing needs to be applied. They need to lose licensing, whether it be lawyers, whether it be police. And that is all, my brothers. Hope you all stay safe. I'm out.